The Chernobyl nuclear disaster was an accident that happened on Saturday the 26th of April 1986 at the number 4 reactor in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near the city of Pripyat in the north of the Ukrainian SSR in the Soviet Union. It is widely believed to be the worst nuclear disaster in history in terms of financial and environmental damage and in human casualties. Along with the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster in Japan, it is rated at 7 on the International Nuclear Event Scale, its highest possible rating. More than 500,000 personnel were involved in the initial emergency response, along with the subsequent decontamination of the environment, costing the USSR roughly 18 billion rubles, equivalent to about $68 billion as of 2019. The incident happened during a safety test on the steam turbine of a nuclear reactor. As the power was gradually lowered in preparation for an electrical test, the power unexpectedly dropped to a near zero level. The operators were unable to fully restore the power level specified by the test program, which put the reactor in an unstable condition. The risk was not made clear in the operating instructions, so the operators continued with the test. When the test was finished, the operators triggered a reactor shutdown, but a combination of unstable conditions and flaws in the design of the reactor caused an uncontrolled nuclear chain reaction instead. An enormous amount of energy was suddenly released, and 2 or more of the explosions cracked the reactor core and destroyed the reactor building. One was a highly destructive steam explosion from the vaporizing superheated cooling water. The other explosion could have been another steam explosion, a hydrogen deflagration, or a small nuclear explosion akin to a nuclear fizzle. This was immediately followed by an open-air reactor core meltdown that let out significant airborne radioactive contamination for about 9 days that fell across parts of the USSR and Western Europe, especially Belarus, 16 kilometers away, where around 70% landed, before finally ending on May 4, 1986. The fire steadily released about the same amount of contamination as the initial explosion. As a result of rising ambient radiation levels off-site, a 10-kilometer radius exclusion zone was created 36 hours after the incident. Nearly 50,000 people were evacuated from the area, primarily from Pripyat. The exclusion zone was later increased to 30 kilometers, when a further 68,000 people were evacuated from the wider area. The reactor explosion killed 2 engineers and severely burned 2 more. A massive emergency operation to put out the fire, stabilize the reactor, and clean up the ejected nuclear core began. In the disaster and immediate response, 134 station staff and firemen were hospitalized with acute radiation syndrome due to absorbing high doses of ionizing radiation. Of these 134 people, 28 died within days to months afterwards, and approximately 14 suspected radiation-induced cancer deaths followed within the next 10 years. Substantial cleanup operations were taken in the exclusion zone to deal with local fallout, and the exclusion zone was made permanent. Among the wider population, an excess of 15 childhood thyroid cancer deaths were documented as of 2011. The United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation has, at multiple times, reviewed all the published research on the incident and found that at present, fewer than 100 documented deaths are likely to be attributable to increased exposure to radiation. Determining the total eventual number of exposure-related deaths is uncertain based on the linear no-threshold model, a contested statistical model which has also been used in estimates of low-level radon and air pollution exposure. Model predictions with the greatest confidence values of the eventual total death toll in the decades ahead from Chernobyl releases vary, from 4,000 fatalities when solely assessing the 3 most contaminated former Soviet states, to about 9,000 to 16,000 fatalities when assessing the total continent of Europe. To reduce the spread of radioactive contamination from the wreckage and protect it from weathering, the protective Chernobyl nuclear power plant sarcophagus was complete in December 1986. It also provided radiological protection for the crews of the intact reactors at the site, which were restarted in late 1986 and 1987. Due to the continued deterioration of the sarcophagus, it was further enclosed in 2017 by the Chernobyl New Safe Confinement, a larger enclosure that allows the removal of both the sarcophagus and the reactor debris, while containing the radioactive hazard. Nuclear cleanup is scheduled for completion in 2065.